So in 1952, King George VI died, and a young Princess Elizabeth became Queen. The whole country and Nuneaton started preparing for the Queen's Coronation in 1953, and someone who can remember all the celebrations that were going on is Patrick Woodcock. Patrick, whereabouts were you in 1953?
In 1953, I was living with my family, mother and dad and three other children, in St Nicholas Road. The coronation sort of really started on the announcement of the death of King George VI, which I can remember particularly well because I was at the school at the time in Coton Road, which was St Joseph's Catholic School, and we were all trooped into the church to say prayers or whatever you do at the funeral or the death of a king. And it was a bit of a unique occasion because it had never happened before.
No.
And I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and I couldn't understand why the dinner ladies were crying.
Oh, right.
And some of the girls were crying as well. And we went into the church, can't remember much about it, said some prayers, sang some hymns, but then we all came out and we assembled in the playground. We weren't allowed to sing God Save the Queen in the church, so we came out and sang God Save the Queen in the school playground, and that's about as much as I can remember of that.
Right.
And then sort of building up to the coronation at school, I can only remember a bit of a party where we all sat around in a sort of U shape, and we had sort of what we call goodie bags. Sort of, and in those days, the only thing you had was a cake, a bun, and a biscuit or something like that. And of course, we all got presented.
Yeah, I've spotted this
with a
coronation mug.
Yes.
This coronation mug. I mean, that they come out for all new monarchs, but. You lived in St Nicholas Road at the time. Did St Nicholas Road have a street party, or can you remember a street party?
No, we didn't have a street party, and trying to have some memory of it is rather difficult. I can remember certain things that happened.
Lots of houses were decorated, weren't they?
Yes.
Red, white, and blue everywhere.
In particular, my mother decorated our house. And it was sort of a decoration between the bays.
Oh right, yes.
It was sort of red, white and blue, crepe paper, if you can remember crepe paper.
Yes, yeah.
Between the bays and the picture of the Queen, and then sort of bunting that sort of came out to the fence. But unfortunately, it rained the day before.
So all the crepe paper.
So all the crepe paper and everything got destroyed. And so she worked through the night, and it was all rebuilt again. And subsequently, she won the first prize for the best decorated.
Oh, she deserved it if she was working through the night.
Oh.
But I mean, the town hall was all bedecked out.
I can remember that because, saying earlier, we lived in St Nicholas Road, and the school was in Coton Road. So I used to walk through the town every day. And towards the event of the coronation, I can remember all sorts of sort of scaffold poles going up and things strung across the road round the council house, and particularly lions and unicorns.
Yes.
I can remember those. And there was a big sort of decorative gateway made into the park.
That's right.
And something in front of the council house.
Yeah.
But something else I can remember. I don't think it's been mentioned, and again it's only a vague memory, is in the park there was a big construction because the Nuneaton Operatic Society performed the operetta Merry England for that time.
For the coronation.
I didn't see it because I was too young, and I would have probably found it quite boring. But I can remember little snippets of things actually going on. Which left a sort of an impression in my brain. but the actual day of the coronation, all sorts of things were going to happen, but a rain was threatened. I can't remember there being talk of a street party, but we were all assembled in the girls' high school in the gymnasium, and it was a fancy dress party. And I went dressed as a crusader, which is something we're not allowed to say today, but I was dressed as a crusader. And it was all sort of like knitted, and I got like a woolen knitted tea cosy with a hole in it on the head, and a big long white sort of tabard or something down below me. There's a big cross on it.
Big red cross.
A big red cross. And a grey knitted pullover and some gauntlets or something. And a sword. My dad had made a sword with silver paint on it, and we all had to parade around in this in the gymnasium in the school. And I was most disappointed because I got some school chums or chums that I played with, and very few of them wanted to dress up. But there was a few of us, and I won second prize, which I found a bit disappointing, because the guy who won the first prize was dressed as a lion. I couldn't see the connection between a lion and anyway, and there was a shop in the town called Collett's. There was a Mr. Collett, Horace Collett, I think his name was always. I think the company was called Horace Collett. And he put his hand in his pocket, and I'd never seen so many half-crowns at that time in my life. And he gave everybody a half-crown, and the winner got 5 bob, which in today's money is what, 25p, 25p and 12.5p, something like that. But I can't remember there being any food, which is rather strange. I would have thought that would have made an impression.
Well, I thought you was going to say that the family gathered around television sets.
There's a story about television sets, because we didn't have a television set. Most people in the street didn't have a television set, even though it was a bit of a well-heeled area. But prior to the coronation, a number of aerials, aerials, used to appear on the roof. But directly opposite us there were 2 school chums, and I heard the story that their dad had decided to have the aerial put in the attic, so the neighbours wouldn't know they got a television, so they didn't come knocking at the door to see it. But the only way that we saw, or I saw, anyone saw, the coronation really in colour was to go to the Ritz, because it was filmed, the whole thing was filmed, so you went afterwards, and you sat through about 3 hours of marching soldiers, which I wasn't particularly impressed in, quite honestly.
No. But you can remember going and watching it.
I can remember going and watching it, yes.
And I suppose a lot of people went to see it, and the cinema was indeed full.
Oh, the cinema was always full, I remember, when we used to go. I think the same year, I think it was 1953, a bit of a digression, the film The Dam Busters came out.
Oh, right.
And we went to see the film The Dam Busters, which was more thrilling than the coronation. And it was absolutely full. I mean, it was absolutely full, and you had to squeeze in. We went to the first house, and I remember coming out of the cinema, and the people were queuing as far as the scaler to get into the second house. Anyway, we've gone off the coronation, but I say I can remember it, but only sort of little bits of information. And going back to coronation day again, it rained in about 11 o'clock time. And
most famously, if you recall the film, the Queen of Tonga insisted on an open top carriage.
Right. I seem to remember that. Because also we had a magazine that was fascinating me, and I think it was called the London Illustrated News, and the word illustrated was always predominant, and it was always called the Illustrated. So you could go through the magazine, because it's been produced within days, and see all the pictures of the coronation. I think in those days, all the newspapers, we lived in the black and white world then.
Yes.
Newspapers were black and white. and the well, films and everything was in black and white.
Yeah.
And there's another significant thing which happened just before the coronation. Queen Mary died. Queen Mary died, and she was the husband of. No, her husband was King George V.
Yeah.
And I remember a lot of the newspapers had the name of the newspaper, like the Daily Sketch or whatever it was in those days. It was printed instead of red, because that was the only colour in the newspaper. It was printed in purple. So I do remember.
Yeah.
that.
It's been a fascinating insight of what did go on in the town in 1953. I'd like to thank you, Patrick, for sharing those memories with us. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Well, I hope it's useful to you.